Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Maura and Caitlin from the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. Thank you so much for joining us today for our presentation on nutrition ranking. We're excited to talk more about this feature that is offered from the Food Bank and then all that it has to offer. The focus of this presentation is to explain what nutrition ranking is, to share with you some of the changes that have been made to the system recently, how to best use nutrition ranking when you're placing orders for your pantries, and then also other ways that you can be more involved with the nutrition ranking process. So here is a quick overview of our agenda for this presentation. We're going to start with an introduction to what nutrition ranking is, and then discuss the new healthy eating research guidelines that are informing our nutrition rankings. Then we're going to provide you with some ordering tips, give some other considerations for your ordering practices. And then lastly, we're going to talk on more about our one-on-one consultations that we provide about nutrition ranking. So what is the nutrition ranking system? So nutrition ranking classifies the foods that are offered by the food bank into one of three categories. Choose often or green, choose sometimes or yellow, or choose rarely or red. And these are based on their nutritional content. So nutrition ranking is available as a guide for agencies during their ordering to support the health of clients. So we're hoping that this system takes away the work of having to make nutritional decisions for you. So instead of you having to take the time to look at nutrition labels in bulk, this is more of a streamlined system. We hope that if you have that ordering power at your pantry or agency, this tool will help you with ordering by saving time, assisting with making decisions between items, meeting the different nutritional needs of the different diet needs of the populations that you work with. So we hope that overall this is going to be a very helpful tool. So here are the three main nutrition rankings that are available on our menu. So first off, we have choose often or green. So choose often items are the most nutritional items that are available on our menu. They include items such as our fresh and frozen fruits and vegetables, canned vegetables with low sodium, canned fruits that are in water or their own juices, canned proteins like tuna in water, and of course our whole grain products. Next up, we have our choose sometimes / yellow products. These products have some nutritional value, but they could not be as healthy as if they are consumed too often. These products include items like refined grains, such as pasta or white rice, canned vegetables that are not low in sodium, or canned fruits that are in a light syrup, and then certain proteins, such as the 80-20 ground beef. And then lastly, we have our choose rarely / red items. Choose rarely / red items. So these items contain the least nutritional value on our menu. They include items such as highly processed meats like bacon or hot dogs, full fat or high sugar or high sodium dairy products, and higher sodium shelf products such as mac and cheese or the canned chili. So what ultimately puts a food into one of these categories is the food's saturated fat, sodium, and sugar contents. So certain levels of each of these categories will put the foods into a choose often, sometimes, or rarely category. For a food to be choose often, all three of these levels must be within certain acceptable ranges. So when we get a new product, so something that we haven't had previously on our menu, we work with our warehouse team to determine what category that product is used in or goes into using our new ranking guidelines. Additionally, you may have noticed that there are some changes have been made to our menu over the last few months. This is because we have changed over from internal guidelines for nutrition ranking to guidelines that are coming from the healthy eating research, or HER as we call them. So overall, products have mostly stayed in their previous categories, but there have been some changes that you may have noticed, which we are going to go into.
So the new guidelines that we're using that Maura was just referring to are called the Healthy Eating Research Guidelines. So these were established in 2019 by a panel of food and nutrition experts. And these are the same guidelines that are going to be in use at food banks across the country. So it really is going to help a lot with consistency. And like Maura said, a lot of the categories or a lot of the items have stayed in their same categories between what we're using now and the internal guidelines that we used to be using. But there are slightly different cutoffs for sodium, saturated fat, and added sugar, like Maura was alluding to. So the purpose in general of using a nutrition ranking system like this is just for consistency and also just for ease of identifying nutritious foods. So for example, if you're choosing between two foods on the menu that are similar and you want to go with the more nutritious version, you can choose the choose often version. And that way too, you're not having to worry about, did the brand change? Is there a different nutrition label? Things like that. So this will just make it a lot easier to identify those most nutritious foods on the menu. So the categories that are in the new HER guidelines are, like Maura was saying, choose often green, choose sometimes yellow, and choose rarely red. And there are 3 other categories that you might see popping up under that nutrition designation on the menu. And those are unranked, non-food, and assorted, not ranked. So I'll talk in just a minute a little bit about what unranked means. That's actually a new category that's specific to the healthy eating research guidelines. But non-food obviously would just be something like pet food or sanitary items, things like that, we don't need to rank nutritionally. And then anything ranked as assorted, not ranked, would just mean that it's kind of a miscellaneous load, right? It might be assorted meats or assorted breads, things like that might have a mix of different nutrition rankings within that assortment, but we don't want to give a total overall category just because there may be different kinds within that load. So those unranked items that I mentioned are a new piece of this new system that we're using. So this would include things like cooking staples, so specifically things like dressing, condiments, baking ingredients like flour, cooking oils, and also spices. So essentially, this is the category that we would think of as meal builders. So they're not necessarily the most nutritious things ever, potentially, when they're on their own, right? Like just olive oil alone or just flour alone might not be super nutritious, but we're rarely eating those things on their own when we do consume them. So something like salad dressing, for example, even though it may not be completely nutritious on its own, it might be helping us to eat a choose often food like a vegetable or lettuce, things like that. So they're often crucial parts of the recipes that we would want to use when we're preparing choose often foods. So just to give you a little kind of behind the scenes glimpse of what we're using to actually put these rankings into place, this is the guidelines that we use when we work with our warehouse team to put foods in a certain category. So as you can see, there's certain gram limits for saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar. And there's slightly different cutoffs sometimes for different categories as well. And you can see that in certain categories, like desserts, for example, all desserts are automatically falling into choose rarely. Or for example, with grains, there's an additional stipulation in addition to the normal cutoffs that the first ingredient must be a whole grain. So there's a few different things that we also look into when we're putting these different items into their categories. And you don't necessarily need to worry about the nitty-gritty of all of this, but just to give you a little kind of glimpse of how this is happening behind the scenes, this is the guide that we're using.
All right, and we also just wanted to take a moment to make clear that while some of our foods are labeled as choose rarely items, that does not mean that these foods are choose never. So foods that are marked as choose rarely have importance in our lives for many reasons. So many choose rarely items have cultural or emotional significance, such as having cake on your birthday or hot dogs at a baseball game. Additionally, many of the choose rarely foods on the menu are staples in a household or are more accessible for a certain population of pantry goers, such as the canned meals. So while we don't want to be eating choose rarely items all the time or have them as the majority of items that are available in your pantry, having them in your pantry available is not a bad thing by any means. And we don't at all encourage that if you see that, you automatically don't choose a choose rarely item. So next up, we're going to go through a few tips for ordering while keeping a nutrition ranking in mind. So first off, our first tip is to select products that are labeled choose often or choose sometimes as much as possible while decreasing your choose rarely products. So of course, if you're deciding between two different products, It's always great to err on the side of choosing the more nutritious option. So for example, if you're choosing between the 90-10 ground beef, which is a choose often item, versus the 80-20 ground beef, which is a choose sometimes item, going with the choose often item might be a better selection if that's good for you and your pantry. And of course, we did just get done saying that choosing choose rarely products is not a bad thing, but we also don't want them to be the majority of products that are available in your pantry. So when choosing between some items, definitely go more nutritious with choose often or choose sometimes. All right, and then tip number 2. So when ordering fruits and vegetables, look for items that are marked as low sodium vegetables or unsweetened, like unsweetened applesauce. And then also, if your pantry is able to do this, definitely opt for fresher frozen products whenever possible. So definitely make sure that you're reading these different labels to see if they're marked with unsweetened, low sodium, different kind of designations like that. Also, typically products that are more nutritious, like frozen products, frozen vegetables or fruits, or ones that don't have an additional sauce or so that's added to them. You could sometimes see those coming into our food bank as well. We also just wanted to make a clarification that our wholesale items that we are purchasing directly from the food bank are typically items that are unsweetened and low sodium. But sometimes when we get items that are from TFAP or from donated, they might not automatically be items that are low sodium or unsweetened. So just keep in mind these different designations, as all of the products in our warehouse might not automatically be low sodium or unsweetened. So definitely keep those things in mind as you're doing your ordering.
All right. And our third tip is around grains. So you can see on the screen here, we have brown rice and quick oats, and both of them have in parentheses in the titles whole grain. So these are two of our most popular whole grain products. And so ideally, in with maybe some refined grain products like pasta and things like that, it's a really good idea to prioritize whole grain products like this as much as possible. And as you saw when we were sharing the graphic that we used to actually rank these different items, having whole grain as the first ingredient is a requirement to be ranked as a choose often food on our menu. So if you didn't see a whole grain designation in the title of a product and you're wondering if it's whole grain or not, if you see that choose often designation under nutrition on the menu, you can be pretty sure that it is a whole grain product, or at least made with majority whole grains. If you see it as a choose sometimes or a choose rarely, it probably is not a whole grain product. Again, that doesn't mean that you can't order it or shouldn't order it, but if you're looking to mix in some more whole grains, those choose often grains are a good bet. And our fourth tip is around protein and dairy. So like Maura mentioned earlier, it's a good idea to, when possible, choose more lean protein options and also more lean dairy options. So things like 90-10 beef instead of 80-20 beef when possible, or poultry options also tend to be pretty lean. And same thing with our dairy products. So fat-free or 1% when possible is also a great idea. And again, our nutrition ranking system factors in things like saturated fat. So if you see something listed as a choose often food, you can be pretty sure that it's lower in saturated fat and therefore a more lean choice. So while all these things are good to keep in mind, this nutrition ranking system kind of wraps all those factors in and takes a little bit of the guesswork out on your part, right? So we also wanted to touch on nutrition ranking versus HIPNAP eligibility. So we've gotten a decent amount of questions on this over the past few months, and I can definitely see why, because it is a little bit of a confusing element of the menu. So when we're talking about HIPNAP eligibility, you may have seen before on the menu something like purchase nutritious or donated nutritious, or maybe donated non-nutritious. And these things actually have little to do with our nutrition ranking system. They're actually a tool for identifying what foods can be covered by HIPNAP funds. So you'll see this designation under class on the menu in P2. And the guidance changes a little bit depending on product source. So for example, the requirements to be listed as nutritious for HipNap, if it's a purchased food, are a little more stringent than the requirements to be listed as nutritious if it's a donated product. And I'll show you in just a minute what this looks like on the menu. But for nutrition ranking, this is just truly a tool for identifying nutritious foods. It's not tied in any way to what funds can be used to cover the food when you order it. And you'll see this listed under nutrition on the menu in P2. And for nutrition ranking, the guidance is going to be consistent across all products, whether they're donated, TFAP, wholesale, anything. So when you're looking to determine the nutrition value of an item, this nutrition ranking tool is what you're going to want to use instead of the HipNap eligibility. So just to show you a little bit of what that looks like, you can see this top category when you're looking at the menu under a certain item. It says class, and then you can see that it's purchased nutritious. If it says nutritious, that means that HipNap funds can cover it. Same thing with this one on this side where it says ketchup packets, the class there is donated nutritious. Again, that means HipNap will cover it. And then you can see at the bottom, it says nutrition, and then you see those nutrition ranking terms like choose rarely, choose sometimes, unranked, all that good stuff. So when you're looking to see the nutrition value of something, you're going to want to look at that bottom category under nutritious. If you're looking to see if HipNap will cover something, you're going to want to look for that word nutritious under class. And before we wrap up, we did just want to touch on a few other considerations for choosing good food. So this good food term is something that we've been using a lot at the food bank that just kind of recognizes that, you know, there's other things that make a food valuable aside and above just the nutrition value. So maybe it's a culturally significant food. Maybe it's a convenient food. Maybe it is, you know, linked to a celebration like Maura was talking about earlier. So we just wanted to go over a couple other considerations above and beyond nutrition ranking that also might factor into your decisions when ordering. So these foods tend to be things that can meet the needs of specific populations. So in addition to looking for the most nutritious foods, you might need to kind of have some other things in mind if you serve some of these populations. So for example, seniors might really prefer easy to open items. They're convenient items. And again, also seniors sometimes have dentition issues. So considering maybe some softer foods or foods that are low in sodium and diabetic friendly, this can kind of constitute good food for this population. Same thing with young families and children might really benefit from convenience items, kid-friendly items, even if those aren't necessarily the choose often items on the menu. Same thing with unhoused populations might need easy to open items, convenience items that require minimal prep, or even items that are easy to carry. Same thing with working people, convenience items, while they are not necessarily choose often foods, could be really valuable just for their quick and easy nature. And then lastly, populations may have specific cultural food needs as well. And you can have this conversation with your clients to learn more about their needs. But these are just a few other things that might factor into your decisions in addition to the nutrition ranking of a product.
Similar to the previous slide, what Caitlin was talking about, you also need to make sure that you're speaking with your clients about what their specific dietary needs are. So some of the most common diets that we see represented in our pantries include diabetic friendly diets, heart healthy diets, and those that are gluten-free and lactose/dairy free. So diets such as diabetic friendly and heart healthy both include foods that are rich in fiber, have healthy carbohydrates and healthy fats. And then of course, gluten and dairy free exclude and restrict dairy and gluten additives. So if you ever have any questions about what items might meet these criteria, if you know that a good portion of your population has a specific dietary need, you can always feel free to reach out to us at the Health and Nutrition team, and we are more than happy to help you kind of select some items that might be beneficial for the populations that you're trying to serve. And then lastly, one of the final things we wanted to speak about with this presentation is our opportunity for nutrition ranking consultations. So this is a fairly new service that we're able to offer here through Health and Nutrition. I'm the primary person who you'd be working with these consultations, but this is an opportunity that if you are interested in learning what percentages of your ordering fall into different nutrition ranking categories. I am able to generate a report in a specific time frame to show you how you are doing with nutrition ranking and what products that you are ordering that might be influencing your overall percentages in ordering and how much of certain categories of food that you are bringing into the pantry. So different folks kind of have worked with me for different reasons. Some have some executive goals that they are trying to have a certain percentage of choose often and choose sometime foods coming into the pantry. So this was a really great tool for them to learn what swaps they can be making and what foods they might be ordering too much of if it's a choose rarely often and such. And some are just curious to see how they're kind of stacking up from quarter to quarter and are interested in seeing where they can improve in bringing more nutritious items into the pantry. So last year I had the opportunity to work with Catholic Charities Tioga Outreach, and they were kind enough to let me show these documents that we had created for them for last year. But this is just an example of portions of the different kind of statistics and pieces that we're able to generate on our side. So as you can see, we're able to bring up what items that you have ordered in a specific time frame. And then here I have color coded them to show like what their nutrition ranking was at the time. Some of these have changed when our rankings have switched over to the healthy eating research. But we were able to then kind of go through this list and say, hey, well, what if we made a change from this certain protein to a leaner protein? Or how about we have some additions of some more frozen fruits or vegetables of a specific ranking into your pantry. So these are very customized consultations, and we make goals depending on whatever your pantry is comfortable with making. And everything that we work through and generate are all suggestions. It's nothing that you're bound to have to make. It's just good suggestions and ways that you can help to improve the overall nutritional content of what's in your pantry. So that is all that we have for everyone. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. If we have Caitlin and I's email addresses right here. If you're interested in the nutrition ranking consultations, you can please feel free to give me an email. If you have any questions about anything that we have had in this presentation, please feel free to contact either of us or anyone else in Health and Nutrition.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.